Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 26th of October of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting details, updates and geolocations, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Donetsk direction. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes on Donetsk direction, the Ukrainians lost 295 soldiers, 8 armored vehicles, including 1 tank and 3 artillery systems. The clashes on this direction are very heavy. During the day we haven't received lots of geolocations, and most of them we have already discussed in the previous video, but the only thing we know for sure from the telegram posts and so on, that the Russians, as a result of clashes during the previous days, managed to establish control over this railways line and to prepare their positions for further offensive operation. Some sources are saying that currently there are very heavy clashes on the line between Berdych in Stepova, but yet we haven't received even a single geolocation of that. Also, the same situation on the south of Avdiivka news operation. The Russians are currently digging in deeper on the line between Pervomayskaya, Vodyana, Opytna for further offensive operation in direction of Severna and Toniki. We haven't received anything from South Donetsk direction, and currently there is no updates regarding the fortifications in this area. Now we are moving to the South Donetsk direction. We got a lot of very interesting updates from this territory, and the most important updates are coming from the village by the name of Novomykhailivka. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes on this area, the Ukrainians lost 100 soldiers, 2 armored vehicles and 4 artillery systems. And the most important video of today's understand came today from Novomykhailivka. On this video we see another Russian offensive operation, and if you take a look at the screen you can see a lot of explosions. But this is not the artillery strikes or something like this. These are just the mines that exploded under the Russian, let's say, demining tank. So this tank, the Russians sent demining tank, and the Russians were basically clearing this area for further offensive operation. The Russian tanks were trying to create a safe attack roads for Russian offensive forces. There are a lot of interesting things from this area that we need to note, and first of all, of course, that the Russians have a very powerful and very strong tanks. Just take a look at this video. Up to 5 or even up to 5 mines were exploded under the tank, but they haven't managed to deal even a single damage for the tank, and the Russian tank continue its job. And this tank made a significant job, obviously, and somewhere in the fields between Novomykhailivka and Solotka, the tank got on its final mine, and then there was like a final explosion. But anyway, no matter that, the Russian tank drivers managed to survive. Basically, they left the tank, and after that they ran towards the safe and more reliable position of the Russian forces. And there are another very important thing that you need to pay attention to, and I'm talking about this episode of that situation. Just a second. On this episode you need to pay attention on 2 things. If you can see on the top of the screen, there is a tree line. I'm trying to show you with the mouse. And the second tree line you need to pay attention to is this one. And these 2 lines give us the best opportunity to geolocate the area where the Russian tank got on the minefield. So basically, according to the geolocation, the Russian tank got on minefield in this area, so right in front of Novomykhailivka. And from these positions we can calculate the distance from this area to the closest Ukrainian positions. The distance is less than 1 kilometer, just 880 meters. So this is nothing. So basically the Russians have already entered Novomykhailivka, and currently there are clashes inside the village. And because I can't even imagine how the Russian tank could get so close to the village and not being destroyed by the Ukrainian artillery forces or anti-tank forces, or anyways with any type of weapon. So basically, according to that video, as I understand, the Russian tank started movement somewhere in this area. The Russian tank managed to pass these fields and to get the first tree line. And then we saw the episode of a lot of mine explosions. The Russian tank managed to cross the tree line, and then the Russian tank moved to the north. And somewhere in this area, right in front of Novomykhailivka, the Russian tank got on the minefields, and there was a very heavy explosion. And after that, the Russian tank drivers left the tank, and they ran away closer in direction of Russian positions, somewhere in this direction. So that was the video that we have just seen. So according to that, we understand that Ukrainians are no longer control the fields between Novomykhailivka and the Russian positions, because the Russian tank had possibility to move along these areas without any problems. So currently we have a right to correct the map, and currently, as I understand, based on that geolocation, the Ukrainians control just something like this. This is, let's say, so the combat line, currently the Ukrainian line, goes just along the Novomykhailivka, the edge of the Novomykhailivka village. So this is the current situation in this area. As I understand, the Russians during the next days will try to maintain the gray zone to capture these three lines, and they will try to get as close as possible to the village itself, and then they will launch offensive operation from any direction. Anyway, no matter the Russian success on the south, I expect another activation of Russian forces on the north, because 2 weeks ago the Russians also were demining this area. As I understand, they managed to achieve results in this area as well, and I expect another offensive operation from the north. And basically, according to my understanding, because of the Russian tank managed to get very close to the village, the Russians are about to launch the assault operation, and probably the first attempts, the first reconnaissance in force or in combat will take place maybe even this upcoming weekend. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians also managed to discover another Ukrainian positions where ammo depot in the village by the name of Yelizavetovka, and as a result of artillery strike, that ammo depot was destroyed. So another problem for the Ukrainians, another lack of ammunition on this direction can lead to the crisis and to collapse of entire front line. So we'll follow this situation. Also, very interesting updates are coming from Vremivka tactical bridgehead. One more time, I'll remind you that as a result of clashes on South Donetsk direction, the Ukrainians lost 100 soldiers, 2 armored vehicles, and 4 artillery systems. And the most important updates are coming from Malinovka and Priyutine, the cities, the villages that the Russians are trying to storm or attack, or just to bomb them. First, we're going to talk about Malinovka. Today, the Russians published another video with another usage of Product 305. This is like self-navigated missile that can correct its destination, its navigation, its coordinates, and to attack everything that this system wants. Very interesting video, and if we increase the number of updates since the beginning of October, we're gonna see that the Russians used in this area at least this type of weapon for 3 times. This, for example, event took place on the 15th of October, so basically 11 days ago. The same missile, the same squad, the same self-navigation, and another Ukrainian position or ammo depot was destroyed. Epic video. And almost the same case took place on the 21st of October, so 5 days ago, so like every 5 days, the Russians destroyed another Ukrainian ammo depot on the north of Malinovka. Furthermore, the Russians during the previous months attacked and bombed the city not just missiles, but also with artillery rounds, with FPV drones, with bombardments, and the same situation on the north. So what I'm trying to say that according to these videos, according to these geolocations, we see that the Russians are pretty concentrated in Malinovka. And we know that every time the Russians are concentrated on this or that city, that means that very soon the Russians are going to start attack. And basically, the Ukrainian city Malinovka currently repeat the story of Novomykhailivka. We remember that the Russians started with Novomykhailivka with the same. First, the Russians were bombing and attacking the village heavily, trying to reduce this village to ruins. Now there is a demining process, and soon the Russians are going to start storm of the city. The same situation in Malinovka. I expect another activation. Furthermore, on the same front line, we see that during the previous months, the Russians managed to maintain their positions in the vicinity of Gulay Polya. On 8th of October, we got update that the Russians managed to maintain the gray zone in front of the village by the name of Chervona. Furthermore, the Russians are very active in the area of Priyutine, Novodarivka. I know that you're familiar with this piece of information. Lots of Russian sources reported about very heavy clashes on the north of Priyutine. Now currently we can see the number of geolocations in this area. We see that the main Russian focus took place along this tree line. This tree line is under Ukrainian control, but we understand that the Russians were trying to pin down and suppress the Ukrainians and not to allow them to counterattack, while the main Russian forces were attacking from Priyutine to the north. And as a result of that attack, the Russians managed to establish control over this tree line, yet we haven't received even a single geolocated confirmation of that. But anyway, based on this configuration, we understand that the Russians managed to capture. So that was operation on the north of Priutina. And all these three operations create some picture, at least on Gulay Polya area. So activity in Malinovka, activity in Priutina, and I expect some intensifying of actions from the Russian side in the very near future on this direction. Now we are moving further to Zaporizhzhia direction, and we got also a lot of geolocations, as you can see. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of active clashes in this area, of artillery strikes, of anti-tank missile strikes, of tall flamethrower system strikes, the Ukrainians lost 85 soldiers. The level of losses is not big, it's like normal level of loss for this area. 9 tanks, including 9 armored vehicles, including 3 tanks, and 3 tanks includes 2 Leopards. So 9 armored vehicles just for the previous 24 hours. And the most important update is that yesterday the Ministry of Defense reported that Ukrainians lost 11 armored vehicles, including 4 tanks. So basically, just for 2 days of clashes in the vicinity of Robotina, the Ukrainians lost 20 armored vehicles, including 7 tanks and 2 Leopards. So imagine yourself the level of clashes and fightings in this area that Ukrainians lost like for 2 days, up to 20 armored vehicles. And furthermore, this is not like speculation or a fake update. During the previous day, we got a lot of geolocations. We watched all of them, how the FPV squad Babry was attacking the Ukrainian Leopards. For example, this is one of the video how Ukrainian Leopard was destroyed. More Leopards were destroyed between Robotina and Kopany. For example, on this video we see how the Russians attacked and destroyed the Ukrainian Leopard with Krasnopol hit, but this Leopard was abandoned yesterday. If you remember, the Ukrainians made an attempt to attack in direction of Kopany, but the Russians first damaged the Ukrainian tanks and forced the Ukrainians to abandon the equipment. And today the Russians realized that they don't have chances to evacuate these tanks because the Ukrainians' positions are very close to this area, and the Russians took a decision to destroy Leopards with Krasnopol hit. And as you can see in the video, 2 tanks that were abandoned were destroyed as a result of artillery strike. So another day and another defeat of Ukrainian forces. The Russians controlled the entire situation on the main supply roads. On this video we can see how the Ukrainians tried to bring some munition or evacuate soldiers, and as a result of FPV drone strike, another group of Ukrainian forces was destroyed. When talking about Verbova, we stopped receiving any updates from this territory. The Ukrainians realized that they don't have chances to control the fortifications on the west of Verbova. I'm talking about this area because of the fact that this area located very close to the village, and that the Russians do have possibilities to attack this area with FPV drones, with mortars, with everything they want. And the Ukrainians took a decision to step back, and currently the main Ukrainian positions are located along this line. So the Ukrainians are stepping back. On the area below this yellow line, there are just rearguard forces, and the main purpose of these forces just to keep territory and to die as soon as the Russians counterattack. So this is the only purpose. But during these few seconds, they will be able probably to tell to the base that they are under attack. So this is the only thing they can do, because the Russians, after they managed to capture the southern foothold, this one, continue their pressure to the north, and they were bomb and attack the salient, these fields. The Ukrainians had significant number of losses and as a result of FPV drones bombardments and so on. So I expect that Ukrainians will continue withdraw and moving further in direction of Novomykhailivka. It's going to be an epic fail if the Ukrainians at one day will take a decision to step back from Robotina. When talking about Kherson direction, we haven't received almost anything from this area. The only geolocated video we had is the Russian bombardments along the railways. So the Ukrainians continue digging in deeper, trying to create a foothold. As I understand, this is another area where the Ukrainians will repeat the story and the destiny of Ukrainian forces like in Robotina and Novomykhailivka or Avdiivka. We haven't received any updates from Bakhmut, just one interesting video from Ivanovsky. I would like to watch this video one more time, because this is the video of the usage of Russian new generation of Lancet drones. This is the type of Lancet drones who are also self-navigated and that can check, choose, and to control the target. For example, on this video we can see a short title on the top of this video. In Russian that means that target was captured. So basically that means that after we can see this like title, that means that there are no chances for the target that was captured to escape a real strike from the Russian Lancet drone, and as a result of that strike another Ukrainian artillery system probably was destroyed. The Russians improve their weapon every day, and I can say that the Ukrainians don't have chances, let's say, to win the Russians in this special military operation if the situation is going to develop the same way, without support and supply from the Western countries, with a very difficult situation in economy. I would say that the Russian army of February of 2022 have no chances against the Russian army of 26th of October of 2023. So this Russian army is even stronger than the Russian army in 2022, maybe in 2 times. They have better weapon, better equipment. They have solved their issues with production. For example, today some sources published a very interesting video how the Russians managed to improve their factories. For example, on this first video we can see an old factory, and during just few months the Russians managed to build from scratch another like production building. On this video the same. So just for a few months the Russians create a very big plant and factory for production of FPV drones, of missiles, and so on. So this is the situation, just less than 1 year. Another video how the Russians were building their big plants for production of weapon. So during just 1 year the Russians managed to increase the production squares, industrial zone, maybe twice in comparison with the situation before the special military operation. And using these new production areas, the Russians are not building like old Soviet weapon. They're building Lancet, new aircrafts, missiles. They're building everything that brings the Russians to the victory. When talking about Liman area, we got just a lot of losses from the Ukrainian side. As a result of clashes in this area, the Ukrainians lost 120 soldiers. There were very heavy clashes in the Kreminna forest. The Russians continue storming the Ukrainian strongholds and checkpoints in this area, and some of them were captured by the Russians. And the Russians continue artillery preparation of the fields between Terny, Yampolovka, and Dibrova. If we increase the number of updates since the beginning of October, we're gonna see that the Russians are pretty focused exactly in this square, and this area reminds me another Russian artillery preparation before next attempts to attack from Tarskoye salient in direction of Yampolovka and Terny, in these directions. When talking about Kupiansk area, we also got a lot of updates. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes in this area, the Ukrainians lost 225 soldiers and 6 armored vehicles, 1 tank. So significant number of losses, very heavy losses. The Russians continue offensive operation, and as you can see, the Russians continue attacks and improving their positions from the north, trying to get along these fields in direction of Stepovo Novosilovka from the north. The Russians established full fire control over the main supply road that goes below Rakkate. On this video we can see how the Ukrainian convoy was trying to move from Kislovka-Kotlarovka up to four vehicles started its movements, and they were moving in direction of Kupiansk, but the Russians discovered everything and started bombing and shelling this area heavily. This is the only supply road, normal supply road, that Ukrainians have on this direction, and we need to understand that every single square meter in this area is under complete Russian fire control. Nothing can use this area and evacuate using this road, because the only thing that Ukrainians have is just a few seconds, and if they're moving with a very big convoys, maybe the machines and light cars that located on the head of the convoy has possibility to evacuate, but everything that located in the back will be it can be destroyed as a result of Russian fire. So this is the situation, and that's it for this video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.